Today's larger, heavier equipment can lead to more soil compaction issues. Firestone Ag IFVF tires with 82 technology maximize load capacity while minimizing soil compaction. Visit firestoneag.com to learn more. Now it's time to take a look at the markets. Joining us this week is Dan Hussey. He's a senior market strategist with Zaner Ag Hedge. And Dan, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me on, Mike.
This past week was interesting with the federal holiday in the middle of the week giving traders a break. What was the big story in the commodity markets this week, Dan?
Well, I think the big story, not just this week, but even leading up into this week, has been how much of the weather market and the new heat we're seeing coming here in June is really going to affect this crop and its maturity into July. We had a late plant, this spring. That's going to push back that maturity date and that pollination a little bit. So there is some time on the clock for temperatures to maybe recede a little bit. But seeing 90, 95 plus heat across the Midwest is not a great sign to start things off for the summer.
It's not. Should that give growers pause if they're looking to market some of that old crop, see if this market will come to us a little bit, or is the risk just too big?
I think the risk is unfortunately too big. There's also, ironically, rain in these forecasts. So you look out 14 days, and while we've got above average heat for June, we've also got above average rain, which is kind of counterintuitive if you're hoping for that summertime heat or a little bit of a weather market. We're also seeing heat temperatures into the overnight session recede down into the 70s. So any kind of stress the crop was getting, it's getting some relief in the overnight as well.
Dan, we've seen a lot of talk about South America, both corn and soybeans. But on the corn side, that safrinha crop, what do we know coming out of South America? Does it look like it's going to be bigger?
It does look like it's going to be a monster crop at this point. And unfortunately, we haven't seen the exports from the United States balance sheet that you would hope to see from China and others that would, maybe signal for some concerns that that crop isn't going to be there. That's not happening. They continue to be a buyer in South America. They're skipping over particularly our soybean market. And we're seeing most of our corn go to places like Japan, Mexico, our traditional buyers that really haven't, where we'd rather see China maybe come in a big way.
Dan, are you doing anything right now with that December corn? Anything producers need to be thinking about?
I definitely think putting in a floor here at some point, and not just to throw one out there, but that 460 area happens to be really important. Going below it seems to be, from a technical standpoint, a head and shoulders pattern. That would suggest that the fall off that we had from the 470 to 480 recently created that right shoulder in that pattern. And breaking below 460 could open the door, unfortunately, to retesting those February lows. And I don't know about you, Mike, but I don't remember finding a yearly low or a low time frame in that February, even before a crop got into the ground. So that brings into pause that, hey, if we find and search out for a harvest low, how much far down could that crop or that price chart go?
Oof, that is a risk out there in corn. Dan, let's talk soybeans, because we've also seen soybeans continue to sell off. This month of June has been hard on both old and new crop. Are we getting close to a bottom in your mind?
Well, like the corn, unfortunately, it seems like the chart has turned over from a standpoint. But there is the concern that we haven't seen exports where we need them and want them, and almost no exports when you look at new crop at this point. And that's not a great concern if for the commercial side looking for that bottom to form. And certainly the question then will be, where is the buyer? And prices will probably go down to try to hunt that out.
And the buyer right now is probably still mainly China, and they're going to South America for their needs. Is that right?
That's correct. And that South American crop being much larger than originally anticipated. We can talk all we want about the spread between the USDA and CONAB numbers, but the reality is that both analysts are using different benchmarks. A little bit higher acreage number there used by the USDA to start things off. And when we see the CONAB numbers get walked down on yield, we have to remember there's probably acres in the northern part of the country that aren't being counted. There's also been a concern that China has started unloading meal on the international market. And you don't see China unloading meal, and if they don't want to replace that for their crush capacity, it brings a lot of question to what is China doing at this point.
Right. Why did they buy those beans, crush them, and then sell the meal? Interesting. We'll have more with Dan Hussey of Zaner Ag Hedge when we return.